Well, hello there, my brothers. It's your boy, Garrett J, the founder of Wake Up Warrior, and welcome to the Warrior Wealth Podcast. Now, we are obviously continuing down our series. This is going to be the fifth part in our five-part series available here at the Warrior Wealth Podcast. We started this all off in preparation for the Warrior Wealth Summit, which was sold out. We do have the Warrior Wealth Summit for women, which you can learn more about by heading over to wakeupwarriorwoman.com. But today, we're going to get after it again. We're going to get back into the heat of things. We're going to cover our conversation down to the final piece, which is ultimately your ability to lead. Now, we have talked about this now from advertising perspective. We've talked about this from a sales perspective. We've talked about this from a fulfillment perspective. We've talked about this from numbers and metrics. And now we're going to deal with the one part that if you don't get it, you're fucking the whole thing up, which is leadership. So enjoy this 1 hour training from me here at the Warrior Wealth Podcast, and we'll see you at the end of today's show. Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome to the finale here in our training series with My Warrior Wealth. This week, we have every night at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific come at you with a topic and a conversation inside of the game of making money, keeping money, and growing money. We've taken that further into the game of power, production, profit, and ultimate protection. And that's led us through a series of conversations around the ideas of advertising and marketing, which we started on Monday. That led us to Tuesday's conversation into the topic of sales and frames. That took us into Wednesday's conversation of fulfillment and delivering high-value experiences. That took us into yesterday's conversation, which was accounting, tax, and legal, which hardly any of you showed up except for about 150 or so. Maybe there were more in the replay. You were like, oh, this is boring. Wah, wah, wah. And here we are for date night with Garrett on Friday, hanging out on the topic of leadership. Now, tonight I have a special treat because I brought our COO of Wake Up Warrior, one of our individuals who've been here inside of our programs for the last 2.5 years, and we were lucky enough to recruit him away from the company that he was with and the organizations he's been building, and has come on new here as one of the other many leaders here inside of the Wake Up Warrior movement. You're going to get to meet him tonight, and he's going to be part of this conversation with me as we volley back and forth on these topics of leadership. Specifically tonight, I'm going to talk about the power of collision and why collision-based leadership is necessary in today's marketplace. We're going to talk about how collision-based leadership leads into teaching, training, transforming, and ultimately the technician required to allow those three things to exist as a trainer. We're also going to talk about inside the game of leadership why coaching, consulting, and training are all part of every leader regardless of the type of organization that they're in. Now, I didn't wear a suit tonight here to be proud of leadership. Wear it tonight because tonight is graduation of Warrior Week 47. Myself and Colin will be heading over with the series of men who are graduating from this week's evolution, as well as all the certified trainers there also. For all those who are sitting here inside of this training, I welcome you. And if you're here for the very first time, welcome to our finale. You can always go back and watch the rest of them. And for all those who applied for one of the seats inside of the Warrior Wealth Summit coming up June 13th, 14th, and 15th, congratulations. We literally have less than 4 seats that we are giving away still coming into our final event. This means that throughout tonight, you have an opportunity to apply by clicking on that button down below this video. With that application, completing your details and submitting those. Today, my teams have been in an aggressive stance through text, email, and audio, calling and connecting with each individual who applied and finding out if they are an actual fit for those 20 seats I talked about 3 days ago. So if that's you, guess what? While we're doing this and here over the next 4 minutes, as we watch this short clip in preparation for really an exposure to what the Warrior Wealth Summit, Business and Leadership Summit is all about, I would encourage you to click on that button, complete your application while we're going. Because guess what? There are only a couple seats left, and coming into next year's event on this exact topic, the tuition will be $10,000 a person, and you will have to make at least $250,000 a year to attend. For now, though, we've let this open to a whole range of individuals, and one of those individuals might be you. So sit back and relax and enjoy this short clip with a little teaser and a taste of what to expect at the next Warrior Wealth Leadership and Business Summit coming up here in Huntington Beach, California at the Paseo Hotel on June 13th, 14th, and 15th. And while we're doing that, you know what to do next. Click on that link and that button and start your application now.
Inside of my life before I started doing this, the majority of the time I was in scarcity, right? So I I had to put myself in power so I could produce at a higher level, which gives me peace of mind and a sense of security that I never had before.
At this point in time, I'm just like, man, why didn't I do this before? Like, does it even make sense to build a business without this? Does it? And it doesn't. If you're considering, doing something like this, or if you haven't, literally there is no other way. How can you push to the top? How can you push, to new levels if you're constantly scared that the bottom is going to fall out? This is not even a should. This is a must. It's a must.
The biggest unexpected benefit to that has been the certainty that it's given my queen.
One of the cool things is it's simple to go through the whole process of doing it. So now I can produce at the highest level. This all comes down to investing and protecting your family and your legacy.
It gave me an opportunity to simplify dramatically that process. And to bring more value to everyone, particularly my family, than knowing that I'm leaving a legacy for my boys, that we stand the opportunity to change the trajectory of our family for generations to come.
Dude, red vines, man. I don't know about you, but you gotta have a candy that you love sometimes just to divulge into, Alright, so it's time for the Warrior Wealth Summit. This is different than Warrior Con, it's different than Warrior Week. This isn't rah-rah, we're not beating you up. This isn't that purpose. The purpose of the Wealth Summit is to dive into strictly business. And in our business, we've identified 7 dimensions that we actively focus on, which is advertising. This is our ads manager. This is the stuff we do on Facebook and Instagram. We are so active in our advertising campaigns. We're doing something we've never done, which is opening up our ads manager. We spent over $800K in one of them, and we're gonna open them up and show you all the strategies that we've used to get leads, to get sales, how we take a $97 book and have sometimes where it costs us $150. How do we justify and scale a campaign that should, quote unquote, be in the red, but we're able to pull off and scale over the course of 6 months? So we're gonna be opening up our ads manager and showing you what we've done to grow. Second piece is marketing. This has to do with branding, messaging, design, the overall energy of your brand, how we've used movies and marketing to blow up the warrior movement. We're gonna show you how we do documentaries. I'm gonna show you personally how I put together and how Garrett and I put together the sequencing for the movies that we use to sell people, to sell you guys who came in here. We're just gonna show you the documentary, what we call a sales-umentary. The next piece is sales. So we have a sales pipeline for Warrior Week, the same stuff for Warrior Book. We'll show you the sequencing that we've done. A lot of people just see what's on the front side, but many people don't see what's called the secondary funnel or the secondary selling system. The first piece is sometimes just selling to someone on the idea. Once they apply, or once you applied, did you notice there was an entire other sequence that we had, and we do the same thing inside of BMS, inside of DKW with the salons. So we'll show you how we approach selling, and we'll have a bunch of other guys.
Well, there you go. There you go. And for those who are on feeling a little bit excited about the fact that I wore my suit to date night tonight, well, you're welcome. I want to dress nice for you. I want to dress up and, make you feel like I cared about date night. So if you look down at yourself, you're not wearing your suit, you should feel, well, a little bit embarrassed. Just kidding. Let's get into a topic of leadership. Leadership itself is a topic that is not new to any stretch of the imagination when it comes to business and life. There are more leadership events happening at the executive level and the entrepreneur level and at the church level across the globe than probably any other type of event. Leadership is something that we are constantly searching for in business. Some people pay for it and they go out and they learn how to be better leaders. They go to events and specific experiences with one intention, and that intention is just to what? To learn how to lead better. But here's the crazy part. Tonight we're going to talk about leadership. But we're going to talk about leadership on the wake of having a series of other conversations. Advertising, marketing, sales, fulfillment and experience that we deliver on what we promise, accounting, tax, and legal. All of these things, you are either being a leader in those or you're being a follower. Inside of your world and my world, all of us have been called to lead. It doesn't matter who you are or what level of the game you play at. It doesn't matter if you are a backpack entrepreneur in your first game, you're an executive with a large team, you're a big business owner with thousands of employees. Every single day you have been called to lead. Now here's the challenge though. Most of us has considered that leadership itself is something that is found as some magic pill, something that I can drink. I just open up the bottle and there is my magic fix of the 7 steps to leadership. There's fucking leadership books all over the place trying to make out leadership to be simple. But the one place they have not looked can be found inside of a very simple concept inside of the Bible. Oh no. A, Garrett can't say the word fuck and talk about the Bible at the same time. And B, who is he gonna, what is this, a Bible thumping experience? No. I don't care if you're Christian or you're not Christian. What I'm going to say is there's a simple principle that was laid out inside of the game of Christianity, inside of the Holy Bible. There was a man that came to Jesus who was the main figure inside of the New Testament and asked him a simple question. Of all the laws that exist inside of the land, and at that time, the religion and politics were all blended into one, which means the military worked for the church was with the military, the political systems, and everything was all wrapped up in a one bundled place. And they came and asked him a simple question. They asked him and said, okay, listen, of all of the laws, which one is the most important? Which law is the most important of all the laws? Now, Jesus sits there for a moment and he thinks about it. And then he responds. And the first thing he says is love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. This was number 1. Love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. They sat there, as I can imagine, in my mind, listening, maybe a little confused, because they had the 10 commandments. They had the laws according to the way they were supposed to be. And then the second one came out. And this is where the magic begins for our conversation of leadership. Second commandment was, like unto the first. And I was raised reading the King James Version of the Bible, so I'm going to give you some these and thous, and here's how it went. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, if you strip away all the theys and thous, because that might have confused you a little bit, if you love God, step 1, then the next step is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. But this last part in the equation is what everybody likes to omit. They like to just snip it straight out of the conversation. They don't want to talk about it. So we are left with the idea of love God, okay. Second, love your neighbor. Okay, then what? Well, then you're done. But this is difficult inside of a game where a principle in business is accurate and must be experienced, which is the following. And I'm going to write this down and we're going to talk about it. The king eats first. Now, this is tied to another statement I love to use, which is if the king doesn't rise, the kingdom dies. Now look at these two ideas. The king eats first. If the king doesn't rise, the kingdom dies. Now at this point your mind is like, can you please help me understand what the hell you are talking about? How the hell does anything you're talking about have anything to do with you quoting some things from the Bible? Well, watch. Let me stitch it together for you, shall we? Love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. Okay. Number 2 is where the secret is found. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Here are the facts about life. You cannot love your neighbor if you hate yourself. You cannot love God if you hate yourself. If you hate yourself, then the only kind of leadership you can give is motivation. Motivation that comes from a leader who ultimately, at the end of the day, does not find himself worthy, lovable, or acceptable. And inside of that place of loathing of oneself comes the attempted game of Red Bull motivation to demonstrate with cool quotes, cool ideas, and some cool fucking posters on the wall to get everybody motivated to work hard. A man who hates himself cannot love his neighbor. A man who hates himself cannot lead his people. A man who hates himself cannot lead or love God or anyone else. And so I find it interesting that this is the piece that everybody likes to omit. Airplanes have it figured out. They make it very simple. They come to you with your little children next to you and they say, hello. And you say, hello. And they say, hey, in the case of an emergency, put your oxygen mask on yourself first and then put it on your child. Now, this is your child. And the airplane systems understand the principle that Jesus was teaching thousands of years ago that most human beings in leadership don't understand at all. They want to lead, but they have nothing to offer. They come to the table of offering in leadership with this. Empty bottle. Empty. Nothing in it. And their people say this: I'm thirsty. Can I please have a drink? And the leader, who loathes himself, referencing another aspect inside the Bible, when a man or a boy asks of his father for bread, does that man offer him a stone? And yet this is what most men offer in the form of leadership. Their people come to them, their employees, their clients. They come to them looking and searching for water. And you offer them air. They ask for a drink and you say, here, let me give you another. And yet nothing comes out but a drip. And then the drips are gone. And then there's nothing. And you have to motivate and hype everybody up again with, hey, you really did get a drink. I promise you did. You got a drink. Did you not see me take my empty glass and give you of nothing but air? Why are you still thirsty? Because when a man asks for bread and you give him a stone, he remains starving. And so principle one is really simple. You cannot lead another with that which you do not live yourself. When you attempt to lead another human being down a path that you have not been yourself, when you attempt and expect others to do what you have been unwilling to do, when you expect from your team and from your clients' behaviors that you will not demonstrate yourself, you have become nothing more than a leader with a glass filled of air. And when your people come looking for water, when they come looking for bread, you will offer them nothing but air and rocks instead. And then you wonder why people don't follow you. And then you wonder why the best team members don't stay with you. And then you wonder why your clients leave you. And then you wonder why your wife divorces you. And then you wonder why your kids despise you. Because at the end of the day, you have nothing to fucking offer. There are 3 words in leadership that you must understand. Stage 1 is you must learn first before you try to lead. You will learn. Like you attempt to learn. I'm going to learn first. You have to learn. This is pretty obvious. I've got to learn some shit, and then when I learn some shit, then what? People think the next step happens. They open up this gap, and inside that gap, the next thing they say is, okay, I am ready to lead. And there was a time, this was me, I would do this. I would learn some new shit. I would attend a training like this, and I would be like, oh, I learned some new shit from Garrett. He drew some cool models. King eats first. The king doesn't rise, the kingdom dies. Then immediately after that, I would want to go lead other people. I would learn some shit, watch a webinar, watch a video, read a book. All of a sudden, I'm the smartest fucking guy in the room. But I'm not the smartest fucking guy in the room because I'm trying to lead what I learned. And individuals who lead what they learned only have nothing to offer. They become exposed for the posers that they are. The wind starts to blow, and the boat quickly finds out as a leader that there is no rudder to guide this ship into chaos. And everyone on that boat is going to die. Because the king that leads that boat read a fucking manual and then convinced everyone to get on the ship. And then expected to lead them to the promised land, yet lacked one crucial aspect to leadership, which is the willingness to personally live what you have learned. It is the living of the thing that gives a man permission to lead. If you do not live it, do not lead it. And yet this has become our marketplace of information-saturated pussies who learn some shit and then immediately turn around and find some people who didn't learn some shit, and they begin to lead them on the thing they learned. And like an airplane pilot who watched a tutorial video and stayed at a great hotel last night, all of a sudden is convinced an entire group of people to get on a plane and fly with them. But when it comes time to start the engines and when it comes time to take off, you cannot fake what you have lived or what you have not. Without exception, every leader I have ever worked with who is lacking in the game of power as a leader in their organization, it has not come down to the fact that they didn't understand the 7 habits of highly effective fucking people. It didn't come down because they don't have some big vision fucking board or some mission statement for the company or some value statements listed out, or even they don't have any scorecard measuring tools and tactics for their business. It's come down to one simple truth. They're fucking liars. They lie in their leadership and expect people to live what they do not live themselves. The business world is filled with these posers, supposed badasses in the world of business, according to themselves. And that is why when you as a student have shown up at times with the wrong individuals leading you, you have found yourself in an interesting predicament because you came asking for water and what you were given was air. You came asking for bread and what you were given were stones. Here's the reality. There are a handful of seats left. There are a handful of you who need bread. You are tired of the stones. You need a place where you can experience what it is to be around 300 other businessmen who understand that the love of themselves and the understanding of themselves and the acceptance of themselves is what allows them to love and accept their families, and in that acceptance and love of their families ultimately give them the power to fucking lead their organizations and lead their businesses and lead their marketing initiatives and lead their advertising strategies and lead their sales calls and lead their sequencing and systems and technology and lead their fucking teams. But they've come to understand that that begins with a man who is willing to take a stand and be the fucking man and stop lying and start fucking leading. Click on the button. Complete your application. The cost of not leading in your life, literally life or death. There's a man here with me in studio tonight who has demonstrated for years, 25 plus years in business, but also has demonstrated as a student inside of Wake Up Warrior for the past 2.5 years what it is to learn, to live, and to lead the Warrior's way. He's not just a businessman, but he's also a family man. The beautiful wife who shared the stage with him at WarriorCon 1 and spoke to the truths of what happened inside of their marriage and the leadership he's been able to demonstrate to his wife and to his 3 beautiful daughters as they've continued to build their lives living the Warrior's way. Recently, we extended an opportunity to him to move into an executive position inside of this company, a crucial role for us in our expansion of an empire and a movement to wrap the globe and affect millions and millions of men and families. His name is Colin Talley. He's my brother. He's also the COO of Wake Up Warrior Empire, which is a conglomerate of all the businesses that I currently run inside of Wake Up Warrior, Warrior Wealth, DKW Styling, and all of the affiliate companies amidst them. But he is a man who has been brought in because of his skills in leading. And I'm going to have him share some of his thoughts on this idea of learning, living, and leading, and how this applies to you in a leadership position, because he is being brought in for one reason and one reason only. And that is to be bounded with me and the rest of our core executive team to bring order and establish more systems in the process of leadership with our people than we've been able to do without him. Colin?
Thank you, Garrett. And I know you guys thought you were going to see a much older gentleman sitting up here with the 25 years of business experience. So all of the things that I've done to keep that body young and hair nice and dark has obviously worked. Listen, I think there's 2 things that came up for me as you heard Garrett talk. The first is on the topic of the king eats first. You see, I knew that as a topic and understood that as a principle before I got into Warrior. The problem was every time I tried to implement it, I felt guilty doing it. So guess what? I would try to operate from the principle the king eats first. I would try to take care of myself, but I would feel guilty about doing it. So in that, then I would actually strike out at Lauren, strike out at my girls, ignore my team, shy away from people, peers of mine that I worked with, and so on and so forth. I didn't even really see it at the time. As I got closer to the idea of the king eats first and started to understand that literally I had to take care of myself so that I could be a stronger husband, father, leader, businessman, and then started to look at the results that rose and gave space for the other people to be their own king and allow themselves to eat first and see our results as a team, as a family, as a business grow, metrically based, that we could see clearly growing. It was shocking to me. But the challenge was I had to get to a place where I would allow myself to be the king first and allow myself to eat first and know that that was actually the highest order that I could deliver for those that I cared about, those that I loved, those that I was responsible for. So many of you know this king eats first principle. It makes sense to you, and yet you can't stand in the space of that because you don't hold it for yourself. You don't love yourself enough. You don't honor yourself enough. And so actually those around you that are dependent upon you or connected to you actually pay a price because you're unwilling to be the king that eats first. The second thing is on this learn, live, lead. I want you to notice something about the second word there, live. That is an active word. That is a present tense word. Here's the challenge for some of you who've been in business for a while. You learned some shit, you lived some shit for a while, and guess what? Then all of a sudden, you decided it was time, you didn't need to live that anymore because you'd already done it. I've paid my dues. I did that before. That's somebody else's job. I'm going to delegate that. It doesn't mean that as we grow as leaders and businessmen that there are things that we don't maybe do anymore. But there's a presence associated with living this in a way that leads your teams. So the learn, live, lead is an active tense verb. It is not a past tense. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's a way that we actually operate. It's a way that we actually show up to the people that we are responsible for, the people that have put their trust in us, the people whose families trust in us as well. So do not lose sight of the fact that you have to be enough of a man to eat first and stand in that space to create that. You also have to be a present tense, live, to be able to lead. Because you know what? Just because you did it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't fucking matter. You better be living it now if you want to be a leader now. Because just like in fitness, you're either getting fitter or less fit. More fit or less fit. There is no middle point. So you're either living it so you can lead more, or you're shrinking back and your teams and your family are feeling the consequences of that.
This game of leadership is actually quite simple. The first person that I must lead is myself. Like I can pretend, and I did for years, that I could lead other people. Particularly, I would look in my marriage and I would say to my wife, you should do X, Y, and Z. I distinctly remember telling my wife that she needed to be more spiritual. And I would tell her, you need to be more spiritual, would be my words to her. When in truth, I was actually questioning a shitload of things inside of my life, but I didn't recognize that that's what was actually going on for me, and I didn't even have the courage to confront myself, so I would just blame it on my wife. Watch people do this with their teams. They blame their teams for the lack of results that they're getting, when at the end of the day, the person who actually needs the most cross-checking is the leader, him or herself. The first frame I must put is leadership around me. The second frame of leadership that I must establish is leadership with my family. Nothing faster erodes and destroys a man as a producer and a leader inside of his organization than having chaos at home. You want to see a man who's fucking things up brutally in business? You'll see a man who is in complete chaos with his queen. You'll see a man who's in a sexless relationship. You'll see a man who has said all the wrong things and leveraged alcohol and drugs and tools of sedation every single night just to survive to get to the next day. Add Ritalin in the morning to get going, Adderall to get going, and nighttime a little Jack Daniels to put himself to sleep. And so we might even demonstrate leadership to ourselves, but when we don't demonstrate that leadership at home, and we don't lead at home, we then get this delusional idea that somehow I can not lead myself, I cannot lead my family, but somehow I'm going to come over here to this game called my business, and I'm going to magically pull leadership out of my ass. And I'm going to be able to lead when I have not even demonstrated I can lead myself, and I've not even demonstrated I can lead the individuals who are arguably the most important people in my life, my wife and my children. This was me as an entrepreneur for 10 years. Confused as a leader, thinking that the leadership I was looking for could be found in a book, but where I was looking for was in the fucking mirror. It was in the people at home, my children, my son, my 2 daughters, my wife. And what I came to find is as I began to unfold this game of leading myself, Through the Warrior's Way, I had a routine and a ritual every single day to put myself in power. Then I demonstrated and expanded that to leading my family, restoring my marriage, bringing connection and communion with my children. This crazy thing happened to me as a leader. I had access to power that flowed in from those two areas into my business in ways I had never imagined. Not once could you have convinced me in the first 10 years that going on date nights with my wife every week would make me a better businessman, that would make me a better leader. You couldn't have convinced me that spending more time with my children and investing in quality relationships with them would have turned me into a better leader. There was no way. I just thought you showed up in business and shit just happened. But in order for all of this to work, in order for leadership with yourself, your family, and your business to work, this demands that you as a man have the courage to experience collision. Modern leadership requires you to collide. And instead of me setting up this concept, I'm going to get a little insight from Mr. Colin Talley on his thought on collision and its requirement as a leader, both in himself, his family, and the business, and now here working in that position and moving into that position with us here at Wake Up Warrior. Colin, what are your thoughts on this collision leadership idea?
Yeah, so two tracks there. First being that colliding with myself is the only way that I can grow and evolve and see things differently. Before, there was so much effort to try to edify and build a case for the things that I had already chosen to do. So there was this constant, let me make a decision and let me go gather the evidence so that I don't admit that I'm wrong or I could have done something differently. So all of a sudden, I've got a situation where most of my energy is actually spent on just packaging up the content, the almost like a legal argument around the decision that was made in the past. Now, there's this desire to constantly collide with myself to see new possibilities. The more I collide, the more I see, the more I grow, the faster we move, the more I'm able to innovate, and quite frankly, the more I'm able to generate an income and revenue and just happiness and joy in my life. So again, measurable outcomes in that space. The second thing on the collision leadership side is I want you each to think about the business either you own or you're in. There is one person in that business that the whole business, I don't care, I've been in 5-person startups, I've been in 20,000 people publicly traded global companies. In every one of them, I can pick out people that the entire organization has molded around because people weren't willing to collide. They weren't willing to take on that person. And it wasn't even necessarily the highest person in the organization. Entire departments, entire structures, entire protocols within the business have been built around this one person because nobody chose to have the collision. And all those resources, all that time lost. People leaving the organization, good people, because leaders were unwilling to collide inside the organization. It's mind-boggling to think about how much so many of us say we want to lead, but we're unwilling to have the collisions necessary so that that kind of bullshit doesn't happen, regardless of the size of the organization, and quite frankly, regardless of your role in the organization.
Collision isn't a choice, right? It's mandatory. What is collision? Collision is the ability to course correct a situation and a person. As a leader, your entire role is to get clear on where you're going, why you as an organization is going there, and where you're at today. And then to align the troops on your team to get into formation to move towards that destination. This means that course correction is required because oftentimes, more often than not, the organization and the clients that you're leading are requiring from you the discipline and the courage to collide with them when they are off. But here's the crazy part. Do you know why most men do not collide with each other? Do you know why most men will not collide outside of some egoic bullshit, I want to fucking fight you? The reason why they don't collide in leadership is because they're fucking liars. It's difficult to hold somebody to a standard that you don't live yourself. You expect somebody to do X, but you won't do X. So you don't collide, because if you collide, you're in fear and worry about the fact that if you collide, you're going to be exposed. And so we have leaders who avoid collision because they don't want to be exposed themselves for the hypocrites that they are. Or you have the other side, which is individuals who are happy to collide, but they don't actually live the shit they're trying to preside over. And inside of that, they become overwhelming assholes, arrogant as fuck, and they steamroll everyone, and they believe that building a dictatorship is called leadership. Dictatorship starts with a word. It's called dick. Yesterday we talked about this. Dickhead. Dictators don't last. They get killed in the night. Why? Because any asshole can be a dictator, and most fathers are asshole dictators. Or they become complete pussies who are doormats that get steamrolled. Either way, the behaviors inside a business are no different. Men getting steamrolled because they're terrified of collision, or men becoming dictators and just steamrolling everybody else. Collision demands from us courage. But that first courage is to collide with yourself, to recognize that you are where you are as an organization because of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But mostly the ugly. The ugly side doesn't get to be shuffled off to the team. The ugly side doesn't get shuffled off to the client. The ugly side gets to be fucking swallowed by you. You get to own the loss. The victory goes to your team, and the loss goes to you. Your fucking job is to fix it. Get everybody back on point, but you can't do this if you're terrified of collision. Now let's assume that you've got this on point. You're ready to collide with other people. This is going to require 3 skill sets that we will focus on deeply at the Warrior Wealth Business and Leadership Summit. Deep dive packets and action maps given to every member of that audience inside of these conversations. The first one is the topic of coaching. Coaching is not a profession. Coaching is a skill set. What is the skill set of coaching? Coaching is the ability to do 2 things. Hold space, and number 2, ask questions. These 2 skills of coaching are required by every leader on the planet. Don't care if it's for marriage, you're going to have to hold space and ask powerful, direct questions. If it's with your children, you're going to have to hold space and ask powerful questions. If it's with your clients, you're going to have to hold space and ask powerful questions. Now, what does hold space mean? It means being able to mirror back to another person without triggers in yourself. It's being able to hear what another person is saying and ask them the questions that lead them to the outcomes that they desire. These kind of skill sets inside of leadership in your organization are mandatory. The second piece is that of consulting. Consulting isn't an industry. Consulting is a skill set. What is skill set? What is the skill set of consulting? Coaching is holding space and asking questions. Consulting is building blueprints. And here it comes. Being willing to tell people what to do. This means we have to move beyond the coaching skill set of just holding space and asking questions, and we have to enter into a space of actually being able to build blueprints for results to happen, and at the same time, tell people what to do. Now I'm going to come back to Colin on this topic and this idea, but the question I want you to spin on here is, why is it so hard at times for leaders to hold space? And the second piece, why is it so hard at times for leaders to actually tell people what to do, even when they know what is required? They hesitate, or they won't even take the conversation to that place. Colin, what are your thoughts?
So there are 2 things, Garrett. One is they're over dominant in one area or the other. So there is an impatience to go through the coaching process, because there's a process you have to lead somebody on. There's a path that they need to follow. And as a leader, we have to be patient to coach them through that, to ask powerful questions and help guide them on the path. It's a different skill set. And so either what I see in myself at times, and as well as other leaders, is I'm either a coach or a consultant, but I'm not willing to do both. And so it's that I lean toward one or the other that I'm more comfortable with, or is more acceptable in the organization, because I've bent myself based on what my employees expect of me, or my team members expect of me, or the other folks that I work with. On the consulting side, and the ability to actually tell someone what to do, that means you have to trust yourself. That means you have to be confident in what you're saying. That means that you have to have a wealth of experience and wisdom to point somebody in a direction, and be willing to have them go and do that, and be willing to take on the risk associated with that, because it's never guaranteed. And so I think people wilt under the pressure of, I don't really want to take that on. I want to show up as a leader. I want the title of a leader, but when I've actually got to tell somebody to go do something, and then now my fingerprints on that, I don't know. I don't know if I want that. So Garrett, I think those are the two things. One being the coach is patience. And then on the consulting side, I don't know if I really want to be that connected to those actions and what those results might be, unless I know for sure I'm going to get the accolades.
Training. Training is our third piece inside of this. We have coaching, we have consulting, but then we have training. Being a trainer is mandatory as a leader. Being a trainer is not a profession. Being a trainer is a skill set as a leader. This means I have to be willing to do two things. One, I must be willing to collide, and inside of that collision, I must be willing to create conditions that are favorable for the first two aspects of this game to exist. What do I mean by this? Trainers are like rototillers. Rototillers churn up the ground. And inside of churning up the ground, they dig up the possibility for a student to learn. Trainers create environments in which the learning and the space to be held is possible. Without the trainer version skill set, this means that you will attempt to be a coach and a consultant inside of conditions and environments that are not conducive to someone following and executing on what you're leading them on as a leader. The trainer says, listen, collision is a must. It's a must. Zero fucks given. We will build conditions for what? For there to be the right questions asked, and for the blueprints to be built, and for the ability to teach people what to do. This ability to create conducive conditions for learning, conducive conditions for living, creating conditions inside of your organization that matter, that allow your teams to operate optimally at the highest level, and also allow your clients to experience the results that they ultimately desire. Now, beyond these three, we're going to spend an entire half a day on this topic you see right here on the board at the Warrior Wealth Business and Leadership Summit, June 13th, 14th, and 15th. The biggest mistake you will make as a leader in 2018 will not being in that room. Period. The content and the training and the curriculum we will go through, and the experience and the evolutions you will experience as a leader in that room with 299 other men on these topics alone of leadership in collision through coaching, consulting, and training will be worth 100 times what you paid in your career over the next few years. Leading your people is what ultimately makes profitability go through the roof. Not leading your people creates complete chaos. Colin, I'm going to come to you for a simple question. You've been around a lot of leaders, you've been around a lot of individuals over the years, and you've gotten to see a lot of different versions of leadership. Why is the leadership where we use the breakthrough of business and the business of breakthrough, why is it that the Warrior's Way, married up to regular business strategy, actually allows a man to be 10 times the leader he would be if he was just operating off of normal principles? What are your thoughts on this?
It opens up a path and a capacity inside you to be able to make choices with so much power, so much clarity, that the questions just fall away. There's such a force that comes through you as a leader that all of a sudden things that used to be obstacles don't even exist anymore. So what has been so restrictive in the past just falls away. There's just a level that just kind of melts what once was. So the things that have been so restricted for so long, the lap you keep making over and over and over again, where you see the same conditions, you can't quite figure out how to get out, in this world, in the business of breakthrough, those things actually disappear. So you can actually deal with the real problem. The problem today, from a leadership standpoint, is we keep dealing with the same problem over and over and over again. We're not actually getting past it. We're just pacifying and dealing with the symptoms. In this world and in this place, with what happens to you as a man, as a leader, across the board, with yourself, with your family, with your business, you step into a place where you can actually take on what's in the way versus the mirage of bullshit and the chaos that stands between you and the actual thing that needs to be addressed. That's, to me, Garrett, the big difference.
The business of breakthrough is exactly the business that you're in. I want you to recognize that inside of your business, there are outcomes that you and your teams are attempting to accomplish. These outcomes could be considered the vision of the organization. The challenge of arriving at that vision or that outcome is not going to come down to ultimately the how. It's not going to be, well, how are we going to pull this off? That's not going to be the problem. Finding out the how is often quite easy. It's very simple in many cases. It's not going to be the why. Some people would say, well, it's the why. The why is the issue. You know, I don't know why we're doing it. And though I do agree that knowing how to get somewhere and knowing why you want to go there is crucial, this also is not the reason why you will fail as a leader to rally your troops to the vision and the outcome. I'm going to have you consider it's something different. And it sits in the who. The who are your people. Your people are the ones who are going to, with you, bring about the how and the why and arrive at the vision and the outcome. But see, we have to take a look here at the who for just a minute as we wrap up. The who are people. You don't have robots that work for you. Your clients are not robots. They are people. People have problems. People face pain. People have purpose. People have all kinds of crazy possibility inside of them. People are your biggest opportunity and at the same time your biggest obstacle to arriving at the destination that you and your organization desire to arrive at. But there are very few companies who are qualified to train you on dealing with people. You can go to some breakthrough trainings. You can go to some major conversation of therapy. I'm not a therapist. Colin's not a therapist. We're not licensed therapists. You can go to them. I'm not saying it's a problem. Me and my wife have gone. I've gone. I think they're fantastic. What I can tell you, though, is this. You will not find a business organization that will train you on the actual mechanics of who on the planet that at the same time can move directly over into the most hardcore tactical execution of the what and the how, as you will hear inside of Wake Up Warrior, and specifically the game we call Warrior Wealth. We were businessmen who understood business And then we came to understand ourselves and understand people. And the minute as a leader that you come to understand people by understanding yourself, the moment that you come to stop hating yourself, this weird thing happens. You stop hating your people. You love yourself and you start to love your people. You accept that you are fucking a person who makes mistakes, and guess what? So do your teams. You're a person who has some shit that goes on at home that you bring to the office, and guess what? So do your people. But there are so many leaders who have isolated themselves into this tiny little box in the corner of their lives, and they've put on this facade that the key to leadership is to be perfect and to expect perfection out of your people. I am not saying that as a leader you cannot expect big results, that you cannot have a high standard of expectation for delivery of life inside of the organization. What I'm saying is, if you do not bring into account a personal life of a person who's on your team, if you don't know how to coach, to consult, and to train, if you are terrified of collision, if you are more interested in being accepted and popular than you are being respected and getting results, then there is nothing we can do for you. Keep jerking yourself off the bullshit training that continues to give you the 7 steps to leadership and the 27 simple ways to maximize your leadership. Keep giving yourself a fucking hand job and pretend that you're a modern leader. The old school trainers are fucking irrelevant because we live in a modern age of fucking chaos at a level that we have never seen before. And yet leadership is becoming one of the most scarce resources on the planet. Men who are terrified to take a lead. Men who are terrified to take a stand. Men who are terrified to lead themselves, lead their families, and take a fucking stand publicly. I can do nothing about the poser puppet pussies who choose to lead from the fucking fringe trying to be popular. Your social media account doesn't fucking matter to me at all. Because 99.9% of those relationships are bullshit. And you fucking know it. So the only question you have now is, what do you do next? Because we're done. No more nightly fireside chat. This is it. Our 5-part free series is done. And I've given you real content. Not some fucking bullshit. I've given you real content. 5 hours of it for free. Worst case, I hope your life is better. And you see some things differently from this week together. Best case, you choose to join us. And you click on that button below this video. You complete the application. And you step into a game that will change you in ways you could never imagine. To conclude us here in tonight's training, I'm going to have Cullen share a bit about his journey and how he came here as a businessman to Warrior almost 3 years ago. And now will sit in one of the most powerful positions in this organization, which is ultimately the man who manages and deals with and builds and leads the operations and the people inside of Wake Up Warrior, both internal and all of our contractors all over the globe, and also being in stewardship of the thousands and thousands of men like you who come to this place. But in order to understand leadership, you have to actually understand where a man has come from. And so for the next 5 minutes, and let's put that on the clock so that Cullen can see it on his side. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to let Cullen tell you a story. It's going to be a story of how a man showed up looking for something almost 3 years ago. And inside that place of looking, he found a leader in himself. He found a leader in his family. And he found a leader in his organization.
and inside of the business that he was part of with major stewardship, and how that leadership led him here to this place to ultimately become one at the front lines with me, Coach Sam, Jeremy, Jeff, all of our core teams, Daniel, Runar, Gus, everyone else that sits here at the core. And so here's your treat for the next 5 minutes to hear the story of a man who was a leader, but who became a global leader with us here at Wake Up Warrior. Colin?
So January 20th, 2016, about 2, 3, 4, 6 glasses of red wine in, come across this video on Facebook. There's this guy yelling about some shit and kind of some chaotic messages, and then something comes through all of that. This video, many of you have seen some of the content from Warrior, and so this is one of the videos that Garrett had done in Las Vegas. And so there was a number of things in the video that didn't necessarily apply to my life, because if you were to look at my life, and as I look back at my life, the structure of it and what it was looked really good. Had done some pretty cool things in fitness, raced a bunch of Ironmans, had a great marriage, I thought, and we were in a good spot, but definitely not growing, was connected and doing what I was supposed to do as a father, but somehow it just felt not quite there. And then in business, I just was shrinking. I was just trying to do enough to not get exposed, even though I and we and the teams that I worked with had created millions of dollars in value over my career and had created financial stability for myself. So I see this video, and this idea spoke to me. Much like many of you sitting there right now, there's an idea, there's like a concept associated with it spoke to you. This idea of having it all. This idea of a four-dimensional man just hit me. I go to sleep, wake up the next day, can't quite remember the name of the organization or the guy that was yelling into the camera. And I go crazy. I started looking for it, trying to find it, trying to search for it, and eventually I find the video. And eventually I get engaged, as you have this week, with the Warrior content. Eventually I decide to step into an experience that was the Warrior Week experience as it was at the time. And eventually I start to figure out how to tell the truth about some things, about where I was, about really where I was in my life. So even though the details of my life suggested, especially if I took myself back 5 or 10 years earlier and said, hey, Cullen, you're going to be here, I would have thought, man, life would be awesome. And yet, the truth was, I was fucking dying inside. So I started down this path. Started down this path of self-discovery, started colliding with myself, started telling the truth about where I was, the pain that I felt, the things that were a mirage. And then the world started to open up. I started to grow. The marriage that was very good became fucking great and beyond what I could have imagined. I created space for a woman that I had never been able to create for her to grow and change. I started to build a legacy through my daughters. It wasn't just that I was just taking care of them. I was actually building my fucking legacy, girl by girl by girl, each daughter, each one. Not just being responsible, but actually laying a path, helping them figure out how to create the life that they desire. And then inside of business, I started to grow so fast and so much that not only did the finances and the value grow, but I started to outgrow the positions I was in, and I had to move into new roles and create new spaces for me because I started to expand so much. So I could start to measure what was happening. I could see it based on the most simple principles. Telling the fucking truth, colliding with myself, decided I was gonna learn this shit as much as I possibly could and live it before I ever thought about trying to lead it. But then once I did, taking on the stewardship of that leadership, which has brought me here, which has brought me here. But it was literally one decision, one day after watching a video. If you're sitting here, there's a reason you're here. If you haven't filled out the application, it doesn't make fucking sense. Because yes, you've gotten some good content this week. Yes, you've been entertained this week. Yes, you can pick up a few things. But the truth is, it's not really going to change. So it's time to fill out the application. It's time to have that progress. I can promise you, my life is unfucking recognizable, and I love the fucking life I live now. I am grateful for it. You can have that experience too, and most of all, you can take people that you love and care about with you on that journey. You know what to do. This is the end of the process. Be with us. Be with us at Warrior Wealth. It will transform you, your family, your business, and those people that you're connected with. Thank you.
Well, there you go. There you go. There you go. And we're concluded. We're concluded with our simple 5-part series. And with that conclusion of that simple 5-part series, we're also going to bring an interesting conclusion here to the Warrior Wealth Podcast. Next week will be my final public Warrior Wealth Podcast display here in iTunes or any other location. The only place you'll be able to get this kind of conversation is inside the Wake Up Warrior Brotherhood or inside the Wake Up Warrior Woman Sisterhood that will be forming up this fall. To learn more about those, head over to warriorbook.com and or head to one of our new events coming up at the Warrior Wealth Summit. Either way, I've enjoyed having you here in this 5-part series, and I look forward to bringing you your final free Warrior Wealth podcast here happening next week. Until then, have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you next week in our finale here on the Warrior Wealth Podcast.